Learning about Voldemort. Harry sat in the dimly lit corner of the library, surrounded by dusty tomes and feeling the weight of discovery. Hermione had just finished explaining what she'd found in Problematic Wizards and Where to Cancel Them, a comprehensive guide to historical toxicity in the magical community. "So you're telling me," Harry said slowly, adjusting their rainbow-striped scarf, "that Voldemort didn't just kill my parents because they opposed him politically?" "Oh no, it's so much worse than that," Hermione said, her eyes blazing with the fire of someone who'd just discovered the ultimate injustice. "According to this text, your parents were killed because they wrote a strongly worded letter to the Daily Prophet supporting inclusive pronouns in magical legislation." Rahmat al-Waziri looked up from his afternoon prayers, still wearing his ornate turban that had somehow gotten even more elaborate since breakfast. "Wally, Sister Hermione, you mean to tell me this Voldemort guy was triggered by grammar?" "Not just grammar, Rahmat." Hermione slammed the book down so hard that Madame Pince shushed her from 3 aisles away. "Your parents, Harry, were the first wizards to publicly use they either me pronouns in a formal magical document. They literally died for inclusive language." Harry felt their world spinning. But that's so random. I mean, of all the hills to die on. "It gets worse," Hermione continued, flipping through pages frantically. "Voldemort's manifesto, yes, he wrote a manifesto, because of course he did, explicitly states that he targeted your family because your father once said toxic masculinity in a Wizengamot meeting and your mother started a support group for the witches against the patriarchy." "Seriously?" Harry's voice cracked. "My parents were killed by the world's first magical incel." Rahmat finished his prayers and turned to face them, stroking his increasingly suspicious-looking beard. "Archie Harry, this explains everything. In my research for the school purposes, I discovered that Voldemort's Death Eater recruitment pamphlets literally say no simps, no cucks, pureblood alphas only." Hermione gasped so dramatically that several portraits on the walls turned to stare. "That's exactly the kind of toxic masculinity that the patriarchal system uses to." Right, Harry interrupted, having heard this lecture approximately 47 times since September. "But what does this mean for me? For us?" "It means," Hermione said, standing up and beginning to pace in that way that meant she was about to launch into a full academic presentation, "that you're not just Harry Potter, the boy who lived. You're Harry Potter, the non-binary icon who survived the ultimate hate crime." "So Penala," Rahmat muttered, pulling out what appeared to be a prayer rug from his school bag. "Brother Harry, you're basically the chosen one of social justice. Voldemort represents everything harem about the old magical order, toxic masculinity, binary thinking, probably doesn't even recycle his potion bottles." Harry stared at their friends. "So you telling me that the most evil wizard in history is basically a Reddit moderator with a wand?" "Worse," Hermione exclaimed, her bushy hair seeming to expand with righteous indignation. "He's a straight, white, cisgender male who's never examined his privilege. According to this biographical section, he's never once acknowledged his advantage in magical society, never used his platform to lift up marginalized voices, and, get this, he dead names people as a form of torture." "That's horrible," Harry whispered, though part of them wondered if there might be other, more traditionally evil things that Voldemort did. Rahmat suddenly looked up from where he'd been quietly praying. "Wallahi, I just realized something. If Voldemort is everything problematic about traditional magical society, and Harry represents progressive values." "Yes?" Hermione prompted eagerly. "Then Harry defeating Voldemort as a baby was literally the first act of resistance against the patriarchal magical establishment." Rahmat's eyes shone with the fervor of someone who'd just connected all the dots. "Allahu Akbar, we're part of a revolutionary movement." "Exactly," Hermione practically shouted, causing Madame Pince to come storming over with a look that could have petrified a basilisk. "Miss Granger, if you cannot maintain appropriate library volumes, you'll need to." "I'm sorry, Madame Pince," Hermione interrupted, "but we've just discovered that Harry's entire existence is an act of rebellion against centuries of oppressive magical hierarchies, and frankly, I think that deserves some emotional expression." Madame Pince blinked several times, clearly trying to process this statement. "I see. Well, Perhaps you could express your revolutionary fervor more quietly." After she left, Harry slumped back in their chair. This is insane. So Voldemort isn't just evil because he kills people and wants to take over the world. "Oh, he probably does those things too," Hermione said dismissively, "but the real evil is his complete refusal to examine his privilege or engage in any meaningful self-reflection about his role in perpetuating systemic oppression." Also, Ramad added, "According to this other book I found, he's never once acknowledged the contributions of non-European magical traditions. Classic cultural appropriation behavior." Harry rubbed their temples, feeling a headache coming on. "So let me get this straight. Voldemort killed my parents because they supported inclusive pronouns. He represents toxic masculinity and privilege, and defeating him is basically, what, a social justice victory. You're getting it?" Hermione beamed. "And the beautiful thing is, Harry, your very existence challenges everything he stands for. You're transgender, you're fighting against traditional gender roles, you're friends with someone from a different religious background," she gestured at Ramad, "and you're allied with someone who's actively dismantling patriarchal structures." She pointed proudly at herself. "This is heavy," Harry muttered. "I thought I was just trying to stop a dark wizard. Now I'm apparently the chosen one of wokeness." "Bismillah, brother, it's not just about being woke," Ramad said seriously. "It's about justice. True justice. Voldemort represents everything that's wrong with systems of power, the way they exclude, the way they harm, the way they refuse to change." And Hermione added, pulling out yet another book, "According to Decolonizing Defense Against the Dark Arts, a intersectional approach, traditional methods of fighting dark wizards have always relied on masculine, aggressive approaches. But you, Harry, you survived as a baby not through violence, but through your mother's love, which was, fundamentally, an act of radical resistance against a system that devalues feminine power." Harry stared at her. "Hermione, you do realize you just made my mother's love sound like a political statement. All love is political under systems of oppression," Hermione declared triumphantly. Ramad nodded sagely. "In Islam, we say that to save one life is to save all of humanity. Your mother's sacrifice wasn't just about you, Harry, it was about preserving the possibility of a more just world." "Great," Harry said weakly. "So no pressure then." "The weight of liberation is always heavy," Ramad said solemnly. "But consider this, every time you correct someone's pronouns, every time you challenge assumptions, every time you exist authentically in a world that tells you not to, you'll continue in your parents' work. Plus," Hermione added excitedly, "think about our friend group. We like the perfect intersectional alliance. You're challenging gender norms, Ramad is representing religious diversity, and I'm fighting patriarchal structures. We're basically a walking, talking representation of everything Voldemort fears. So our friendship is an act of war against fascism?" Harry asked. "Exactly," both friends replied in unison. Harry looked around the library, taking in the ancient books, the whispering students, the portraits of long-dead wizards watching them with various expressions of confusion and mild alarm. "You know what the weird part is? This actually makes sense. Like, in a completely insane way, it makes sense. That's because truth has a way of revealing itself," Ramad said wisely, then added, "Also, I'm pretty sure Voldemort's probably never even read a single book by a female author." "Oh my God, you're right," Hermione gasped. "I bet his entire worldview is based on the magical equivalent of Jordan Peterson." "Who's Jordan Peterson?" Harry asked. "A muggle who thinks cleaning your room will solve systemic oppression," Hermione explained dismissively. "The point is, Voldemort's probably never engaged with any perspective that challenges his preconceived notions. So he's basically every guy in our defense against the dark arts class who interrupts Professor Quirrell to explain why the textbook is wrong," Harry said. "Exactly. But with murder," Hermione exclaimed cheerfully. They sat in contemplative silence for a moment, the weight of revelation settling over them like a particularly heavy and politically conscious blanket. Finally, Harry spoke. "So what do we do with this information?" I mean, knowing that Voldemort is essentially the final boss of toxic masculinity doesn't really change the fact that he's trying to steal the gender-critical stone. Wait, Rahmed said suddenly. The what stone? The gender-critical stone, Harry repeated. You know, the thing that's hidden in the school. The thing that grants eternal life and infinite wealth. Hermione and Rahmed exchanged glances. Harry, Hermione said carefully, are you sure it's called the gender-critical stone? Of course. That's what everyone's been calling it. Brother, Rahmed said gently, I think there might have been some miscommunication. We've been calling it the philosopher's stone. Harry blinked. But that doesn't make sense. Why would it be called the philosopher's stone if it's about, wait. They paused, thinking. Oh no. Oh no. Have I been mishearing this entire time? It's possible, Hermione said diplomatically. So it's not a magical artifact that validates gender identity? Probably not, Rahmed confirmed. Harry slumped forward, putting their head in their hands. I've been thinking this whole mystery was about protecting trans rights, and it's actually just about some old alchemy thing. Well, Hermione said brightly, it can be about both. That's the beauty of intersectional analysis. Everything is connected to everything else. Besides, Rahmed added, just because it's not literally called the gender-critical stone doesn't mean our fight against Voldemort isn't still fundamentally about challenging oppressive systems. Harry looked up at their friends, Rahmed with his elaborate turban slightly askew from his afternoon prayers, Hermione with her arms full of books about decolonizing education and dismantling patriarchal structures, both of them looking at Harry with the kind of earnest support that made their chest feel warm and tight. You know what? Harry said finally. You're right. It doesn't matter what the stone is called. What matters is that we're not going to let some toxic masculinity final boss steal it and use it to make the world even worse than it already is. Now you're talking. Hermione grinned. Allahu Akbar. Rahmed cheered, then looked around nervously as several students turned to stare. Sorry, that was. I get excited about justice. We all do, Harry said, standing up and feeling something like determination settle in their bones. All right then. We know who we're up against, we know what he represents, and we know that stopping him is bigger than just saving the score. It's about saving the possibility of a more inclusive magical future, Hermione agreed solemnly. It's about protecting the right of all people to exist authentically, Rahmed added. It's about making sure that toxic masculinity doesn't literally take over the world, Harry concluded. They stood there for a moment, three unlikely friends united by their shared commitment to justice, acceptance, and the radical notion that everyone deserved to be treated with dignity and respect. So, Harry said finally, who wants to help me stop the magical equivalent of an insult from achieving immortality? I thought you'd never ask, Hermione grinned. Bismillah, let's do this, Rahmed said, rolling up his prayer rug with the air of someone preparing for battle. And as they left the library together, Harry couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, their parents would be proud of the fact that their child was about to fight the forces of oppression with the power of friendship, acceptance, and a really solid understanding of intersectional theory. Even if they had been completely wrong about what the stone was called.